Friday night racing
on Off the Ball.
brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
Right, you're very welcome along to Friday Night Racing this Friday evening. We're broadcasting live across all of our social channels. We're live every Friday afternoon, generally at 3 o'clock on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and of course we're live on offtheball.com. This evening we're also broadcasting on News Talk Radio after 8 o'clock. Our man at Cheltenham this week has been John Duggan for really one of the most remarkable weeks in racing history against the backdrop of a global pandemic. This is now the last remaining sports event in the Northern Hemisphere. And even on Gold Cup Day, John, it seems like that was part of the atmosphere of the whole thing.
Yeah, Ger, and an amazing day for Irish trained runners. Every single runner that's every winner has been Irish trained so far of the 6 out of 6, and it's been a strange day. And as we kind of said earlier on Off the Ball AM, that maybe this day should not have happened, but it has happened. And we've an Irish winner of the Gold Cup album photo. And it's funny. I've just been speaking to Willie Mullins and obviously congratulating him on his win, back-to-back victories in the race as a trainer. And now he's preparing to run his horses behind closed doors. So, he even told me himself he was concerned, and he was very aware of the prospect of catching something. I mean, everybody is around here, in a mass gathering, it's a case of now just getting home.
Yeah, and look, the advice from everybody we've heard a little earlier on the radio from Dr. Ciara Kelly that the advice is for everybody to self-isolate when they get home. We've obviously had that conversation over the course of the week that is what you're going to do when you get home. And a very unusual situation in that you are a sports reporter. This is a sports event. You've been covering this event every year for, I don't know, is it 18 years? Was that the figure?
Yeah, this is the 19th, yeah, Jerry, yeah.
The 19th year. This is now a remarkable story. When you left, the National Hurling and Football League and League of Ireland games were all going to happen this weekend. And then all of a sudden, everything is in lockdown in Ireland. And it turns out now everything is in lockdown in the UK, in England and Britain after this, but not today.
Yeah, I really feel like this is just... we are at almost the last point on earth in a way, and from a sporting perspective, where we're everything around the world is changing, and this point in time now, there's still a race at 5:30. It is just, it's very hard to fathom that's actually that is happening. And I've covered many sporting events, been lucky to, and Rio Olympics and the Pat Hickey arrest and everything like this. This is completely. This is probably one of the biggest global news stories since 9/11. To be honest. And I just hope over the next 12 to 18 months that society is healthy and we find a cure for this and that thing can get back to some kind of normality.
Well, you look at how the story unfolded in the United States over the last 5 days or so. The NCAA announced March Madness was going to go ahead behind closed doors. Then an NBA player tested positive and immediately all the NBA games were closed. After that, March Madness gets cancelled. The golf, they start the players and they say, OK, we're going to go behind closed doors all the way up to the Masters and we'll revisit at that point. Then, 24 hours later, all the golf is gone up to the Masters. And then today, the Masters is gone and who knows when golf is coming back. Who knows when football is coming back. Yesterday, football was happening. This morning, football got cancelled. There's a very good chance that we have seen the last meaningful kick of a football or anything until next August or September.
It's incredible, and it's just really hard to get your head around it. The last time we had disruption in Ireland was the Beast from the East, and we kind of knew that the snow would clear and it'd be a few days. And I know we're not in a kind of a lockdown situation in Ireland. We're in a disruptive situation, so shops are still open and that kind of thing. And we can obviously still go out for a walk and that. But we'll be consuming a lot of sports content from the past, from Off the Ball, and from we'll be consuming a lot of things because it's going to be difficult for sport. Is such a beautiful thing, and it brings society together, and it brings humanity together, and it illustrates the best of what we are as people that strive to compete and to win and to congratulate anybody else who competes. And that's what the Irish people who come over here kind of a little bit. Just following guidelines about, there were, the Irish government didn't say he couldn't go. The British government said this thing was on, and people have gone out and tried to do their best, and that's what they've done. And they just try to be normal, but it's hard to be normal when obviously you're hearing and you're reading everything that's going on around you.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that is the key point, that everybody was doing what they thought was the right thing at the time, and then all of a sudden the narrative changed, the information got better, and now racing is going to go behind closed doors next week. And I think that again, you're talking about the power of distraction. The news cycle is about to get very grim in the UK, and there's a good chance that the news cycle in Ireland is going to get increasingly grim as well. Having something to watch while that's happening might actually be something we're grateful for. I don't know if the right thing to do is to continue, and I don't know how long these things are going to continue into the future, but at the moment, certainly, it seems like if there is the possibility of something happening that is a semblance of normality, that we as a society might be very grateful for that.
Well, it's all just being about responsible. Can you be responsible and watch racing behind closed doors? That's a responsible thing to do. Racing or acting responsibly. You're watching it and, you're enjoying it, doing responsible things, keeping your distance at home, or doing what you're being asked to do. That's all I think people can do, is just be responsible about what they're doing. I'm coming home now. I feel perfectly fine. I feel as healthy as I did a year ago here at Cheltenham. But I'm still going to spend the next 2 weeks at home. And I'm gonna bunker down at home, because that's the right thing I think I should be doing.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, we'll talk about the racing as well. We've got Patrick Mullins on the line as well. No, we'll get him in a minute. Sorry, we'll get him in a minute. So look, let's talk about what actually happened today, because as you said, it's a remarkable day's racing, and I'm not going to lie, a lot of people were watching it today and pretty happy about the fact that they're watching that and not watching another news conference.
Yeah, and it was a great day for the Album Photo, the horse trained by Willie Mullins and Carlo, and the Cork jockey Paul Townend. Back-to-back Gold Cup wins. That hasn't been done since Best Mate in 2004. Only been done 3 times now in 50 years. L'escargot, another Irish horse, back in 1971. And it was a really exciting race, and a lot of horses had chances, like Real Steel, this complete outsider coming out the outside. And then Album Photo made a move at the top of the hill. And then it was really between him and Lost in Translation, coming to the last Lost in Translation with Robbie Power on board for the English trainer Colin Tizard. Album Photo is a really tough, hardy, gritty horse. He really is tough. He's hard to beat, hard to catch, tough as nails. And then Santini came with a wet sail, and Monolith was there as well. But Album Photo stayed on to win by a neck from Santini. And it's funny, like Willie Mullins did exactly the same preparation as last year. He sent the horse to Tremor on New Year's Day, not the most fashionable meeting, but it worked. And gave him one prep run, came here in beautiful form, and the horse has done it. And he obviously loves Cheltenham, and Album Photo is the Gold Cup winner. Willie Mullins trained the first 4 winners of the day. I asked him just a moment ago, was his best day in racing? He says you can't argue with that. Burning Victory in the Triumph Hurdle in the first, Paul Townend on that. Paul Townend also rode Monkfish, a really brave horse, to win the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. We had Saint Roy, which Barry Geraghty rode another winner in the week for him, although Paul Townend is the top jockey now. Hard to believe that as well. And then we had a couple of other winners. Gordon Elliott is now equal with Willie on 7 winners, with Chosen Mate winning the Grand Annual, a 7-2 favourite for Davy Russell there, and a 66-1 outsider. You're always going to get an outsider at Cheltenham winning the Fox Hunters Chase. It came to pass, trained in Cork near Mallow by Eugene O'Sullivan, a good point-to-point trainer, and his daughter Maxine rode that. A really easy win as well. That is a beautiful day for them.
That's class. A 66-1 winner, trained by the dad, ridden by the daughter. That's amazing.
That is great stuff. That is just a fairy tale story, really. And the horse was a deserving winner, just scooted up the hill and was going. Everybody's kind of going, who's that? And then you're checking your race card. Oh, okay. I didn't have that one.
All right, let's hear. You've been talking with Paul Townend, who obviously has just ridden the winner of the Gold Cup. Let's have a look.
Paul Townend, I spoke to you here a year ago when Album Photo won the Gold Cup, and he's done it again.
Yeah, what an incredible horse. What a training feat by Willie Mullins. I'm just lucky enough to have been on his back.
Tell us about the race.
Yeah, it was a different race to last year. It was always going to be on paper. But I went out to ride my horse to suit him. We got in a nice rhythm. I missed first down the back the second time. Got jumping well at the business end though. Got me in a nice position at the top of the hill. Needed him at the last. He produced and put down his head and showed his toughness to the line.
Did you know that Lost in Translation and Santini were near thereabouts?
I did. I wasn't actually 100% sure I'd won until I seen it on the big screen. So I had the head down and wasn't sure where the line was, and they were a bit away from me.
He's a tough horse. He's a hardy animal.
Yeah, he's a great horse, isn't he?
Just in terms of the preparation, it was exactly the same as last year. You went to Tremor New Year's Day. You only had the one run, and it seems to have worked perfectly.
Yeah, in fairness, we got a good run with him and Willie. It's a brave thing to do. to go down there and bring him here without a run, but I think he knows what he's at, doesn't he?
Absolutely. What a day, Paul. Monkfish, a burning victory, an album photo. Probably your best day in racing.
Yeah, look, it's right up there. It hasn't sunk in, to tell the truth. It'll probably be tomorrow I'll be able to answer that.
Ruby wasn't here this year. Was that in any way in your mind when you came into the festival that you're now the leading guy and you're riding all Willie's fancied horses, or given you've been here so long, that did it come into consideration?
It was like I suppose a lot of other people made a lot more of it than I did. I was coming here with a good book of rides every other year, and had to take it every bit as serious. So no, yes and no. Any pressure I put on, I was putting on myself. It was never coming from internally, and I knew Willie'd have my back if things didn't go right. So that's fills you with confidence.
Obviously, the coronavirus issue is a big issue around the world at the moment. This is probably the last sporting event for a while. Has it been a factor in people's minds, or have you just had to shut it out?
I think when we got here, we kind of went into a bubble, to be honest. We were speaking about this right now this morning, and it's obviously going on, and it's been a worry throughout the week. But I've been in Cheltenham bubble since I arrived here Sunday, so I think it's time to get back into the real world now.
And the real world is behind closed doors racing.
Yeah, it's going to be different, but at least we can crack on.
Is your dad and Jodie here, the family here from Cork?
Yeah, Jodie wasn't here last year and she's here this year, so no, it's brilliant that everyone's here, and it's days like this that all the hard work they put into me when I was a kid, dragging me around the country, and I took up most weekends when we were children, so it's nice to repay them with a day like today.
When you're coming up that hill, was it a burr last year? Was it more memorable this year? Could you feel it again? Oh, I'm going to do this again.
Kind of. I wasn't 100% sure I'd won till I looked at the big screen. So, when that flashed up, it was as good a buzz as last year. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Paul, well, enjoy the night, enjoy the weekend, and well done on winning the Gold Cup with album photo for a second year in a row.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Paul Townend speaking with John Duggan just a while ago. Let's go and join Patrick Mullins, who's standing by to chat to us about what the week has been like for the Mullins Yard. A pretty amazing day today, Patrick. John asked there, the best day in racing. He asked your dad as well, and he was like, yeah, I can't really disagree with that. What a sensational day you guys have had.
An extraordinary day, and very far removed than Tuesday and even Wednesday. But there's 4 days of it here, and if you have a bad start to the week, you just have to keep thinking that it can still turn around. And I mean, a couple of years ago, we had no winner on the first 2 days, and then Ruby came out and had the 4-timer on the Thursday. So it's fantastic for Paul to do it on his first year, with Ruby gone. There's never any doubt in our minds that he'd be well able to step up to the mark.
Yeah, and look, John asked him the question there. From Paul's perspective, he can't think about it too much. Ruby was on the telly a little bit earlier on saying, he's a champion jockey in his own right. He wasn't in my shadow, but, Ruby does cast such a great shadow that Paul Townend wouldn't have been human if he wasn't thinking, Jesus, this is Cheltenham, and this was where Ruby made his name so much beyond the sport just of racing as well, that he must have felt a little bit of pressure.
Well, look, the way it's worked out in that Paul has been number 2 for about 10 years. He's riding here 10 years. He had 10 winners here already. He's 30. He's not a 21-year-old stepping into the shoes. So I think it's a lot different. I think it's a great media line to be thinking that way. But the progression he has made under Ruby and the way he was able to be handed the job made it simple enough for him to come and just do what he's always been doing.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, he's absolutely served his apprenticeship in that respect. And there's a separate pressure, I suspect, in being the jockey of the horse that last year won the Gold Cup and delivered salvation for the team in a race that they really wanted to win, and then to be going back as the favourite. What was that like for you guys, just to make sure that the horse was ready to go in exactly the same way as it was last year?
Yeah, well, look, we made a decision early in the year that we were going to... it was a complete mistake the way he was prepared last year because of the unseasonably dry winter, and we ended up going to Tramore because they had very soft ground at New Year's and wouldn't have been on the agenda at all only for that, and it worked. So we just said, well, we've been trying for 20 years or more to try and win it, and doing it the way it should be done, and we'd never won it, so we said, why not? If it worked, why change it? But I thought Paul deserves huge credit for for the way he rode him, because obviously, it's easy enough for Willie to do his preparation training and one race go to Cheltenham. But Paul was able to ride him last year as the second string, not really fancied, drop out, take his time, and ride into race. It's much easier to ride that race when you're not the favourite. Coming back to the defending champion, he could have forced him, he could have ridden, the stereotypical safe race, handy and wide, and he didn't. He let the horse find his rhythm and stayed wide, but I think he deserves an awful lot of credit for the way he rode him again under different circumstances. Yeah,
I didn't even think of that actually there is that difference. You've got a target on your back, I suppose, when you are the favourite, and that's going to have you're going to see that in the race tactics of everybody else around you.
Yes, and then, the race was very different this year. Last year was a strong gallop, Might Bite, Temptation Only were in front. This year, Ken Boyd didn't jump or travel, and there was nothing else really to go a gallop, so it ended up being quite a slow run race. You saw they were quite stacked up at the top of the hill. Real Steel was able to get into it. He's obviously quite a quick horse. Yet Paul was able to manoeuvre around that. He's able to stay wide, get a clear run, got in for the bends. He just ticked all the boxes in all the right places. It wasn't one of those rides you say, wow, watching it, but he just did everything right, and he deserves huge credit for that.
I don't know if it was 2017 or 2018 was the day you referenced, the year you referenced, where there was no winners for the first 2 days, and then Ruby had the four-timer on the Thursday. Because you'd been through that experience, was this year where the first 2 days weren't great, compared to what the expectation might have been for certainly people outside the yard? Did that give you all a sense of calm that, okay, this is grand, we know how this thing works, that it is a marathon, not a sprint, and that if Friday goes well for us, then ultimately it's going to be another great Cheltenham?
Yeah, well, look, we came home Tuesday night and we said, Steering for Lunge ran well considering how he jumped, and Felix Zidane was going to run well. Cashback was disappointing, but he didn't handle the occasion, a bit like Carefully Selected, whose race was gone before the tapes even went up. Sharjah and Sealis Emery ran well. They were running well, and the horses that ran poor had their excuse. So there was no need to panic. And when it comes to that stage, there's not much more you can do. Die is cast by the time they get the boat and land here. So we've been happy with their preparation, and you just have to wait for it to come right and hope to God that it does.
And lo and behold, today it did. There was one other thing that I did want to ask you about just before I let you go here, and John alluded to it there, where he was asking about the impact that coronavirus has had on literally every other sports in the world. Racing in Ireland going behind closed doors, racing in the UK after tonight is going behind closed doors. It's been the only thing that any of us have been talking about over the course of the last week. What's it been like for you guys having that conversation, knowing that there's criticism from the outside world about the fact that this thing is still going on, and at the same time, this is your livelihood. You've got to perform. You've got to make sure that you have the horses right and that you're not getting distracted by the fact that there's a maelstrom happening outside.
Oh, look, I think we've been in a bubble here. All we've been waiting to be told that it's either on or it's off, and we've always just carried on like it's on, and it has been on. I'm a little surprised it wasn't maybe behind closed doors, but it was something that we couldn't affect, so it wasn't something we gave much thought to. It's we just got on with our job, and people cleverer and greater than us make the bigger decisions.
Yeah, so you actually had to show up and go about your job. That's the other thing. It kind of puts everybody in a slightly difficult situation where you've got no choice but to follow the guidelines, and the guidelines where this thing is on, we expect everybody who has declared to show up.
That's it. Look, I suppose we've been doing our normal thing, and that's we haven't been told to do anything else. So to be frank, it didn't really affect our mindset at all, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm sure when we come home now, we'll probably get a shock, but we've just carried on as normal here this week, and we'll have to see what happens now. Yeah,
well, that's the thing. It's obviously going behind closed doors next week. The advice coming from the doctors and the HSE and the Department of Health is that people who have been over at Cheltenham self-isolate. They're not enforcing this, but it's going to be very difficult for people who, have to continue about their work to self-isolate.
Yeah. What's done is done. What will be, will be. I think everyone has to make their own decisions, and we'll just follow what we're told to do. But I'm very happy with the head. I think all our team is very happy with the head. We had a great day of sport, and with another race to go, and hopefully we can get the top trainer award off Gordon Elliott.
Have you got a chance in the last?
We've a couple of horses. It's gone down to this race before, I think. So I think we're level on winners and possibly on seconds. So it's going to be very interesting. It's a very interesting aside outside the race.
Well, enjoy, Patrick. Thanks a million. Congratulations on a great week and safe home.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Patrick Mullins there giving us some thoughts on a brilliant day today, a historic day for Willie Mullins, a back-to-back win in the Gold Cup with Album Photo. Johnny Ward is with us. Johnny, how are you?
I'm not too bad, Ger. How are you?
Yeah, you're in the press room there at Cheltenham. What has the atmosphere been like today?
Been a bit surreal, really. I'm just looking at the crowd there, 68,500 or so. I'm in one of the media areas with more of the British journalists, the one in which the Irish journalists are, has been called an enclave today because so many of the Irish journalists have gone home. And that thing you were saying there about self-isolating, I wasn't actually aware of that, that everyone over here is advised to self-isolate. Because, as Patrick said there, we are in a bubble. And I think it's unfair to blame sort of racing for what's gone on. We've followed guidelines. This is the big festival. Football was supposed to be going ahead up until the Arteta debacle this morning. So, don't shoot the messenger. But this is a problem with the British government, I think, rather than the people who went to Cheltenham.
That's the thing. It's actually part of the policy of the UK government to try and gain a herd immunity, and we're going to see what the repercussions of that are over the next 4 to 6 months. And look, maybe they know more than we do, and maybe that's the right approach to this. Other governments around the world have decided that's not the right thing to do because that overwhelms your health service. And it's awful that we're talking about this instead of talking about an amazing win for Album Photo in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, like we've had, when we were under British rule, we had our own experiences of laissez-faire governments. And this one is just bizarre. It's not British at all, the way they're dealing with it. To me, I wouldn't trust Boris Johnson as far as I could throw him, which isn't very far. And I would imagine that with the way Leo Varadkar and our people in Ireland have dealt with it is far more successful. And even if it might be somewhat extreme in cases, I think you have to take no chances with this, and we simply shouldn't be at Cheltenham, and maybe I shouldn't be here either, but here I am talking about the Gold Cup. I'm going to get the boat home now and probably watch people try to avoid me when I get near them.
Yeah, or maybe don't go near anybody might be the best advice for the next couple of weeks. Anyway, a couple of weeks sitting at home, Johnny, watching a bit of Netflix and chill if you're lucky. How bad?
Yeah, I've had a hamstring tear that I've basically not dealt with for a couple of months. It's about a 2 or 3 week job. I wanted to start growing a bit of vegetables, do a few little things around the gaff. This is my opportunity, I suppose.
Get your affairs in order, I believe they call it.
Yes, sure. Well, I mean, there are a lot of people self-isolating, and as much as people are criticising Cheltenham, I would never criticise Irish racing for going ahead behind closed doors. I think that's absolutely fine. And bizarrely, with all the sports called off, and with me being a sports nut, I spoke to Aidan O'Brien about this earlier, give some people something to kind of look forward to and something of a distraction, because this reminds me of the days when you were a kid and the electricity went out and you were in darkness, and it was very strange to know what to do because staying in your house all the time is just not my cup of tea. No,
and look, I agree, and obviously there are very important matters of national health at stake, and we need to make sure that they're being managed properly. But if it's safe to continue with anything that's going to give people a distraction and some form of entertainment, it's one of the reasons why people like sports so much. It is a refuge from the rest of daily life, and the news agenda, as I keep saying, is going to be pretty horrific over the next while. So if they can get racing away and they can be something that we can all sit around and watch and talk about for a couple of weeks, then we might all be very glad of that as a society. We should talk about the actual racing. It did happen today. To go back-to-back in the Gold Cup after not having won the Gold Cup at this stage of Willie Mullins' career is an amazing achievement. And I don't think this was a horse that people 3 or 4 years ago were like, that horse is going to be a back-to-back Gold Cup winner. How did Album Photo get to the point where it's now a name that will linger in history for decades to come?
Yeah, they were a big fan of him, obviously, when he was a younger horse in France. And, they followed him, they eventually got him, they acquired him for Willie Mullins Yard. He's just improved for experience. He's a cat of a jumper. He's very slick, and today he just did the job. He showed a great attitude for pressure. Willie Mullins winning his second Gold Cup in a row having not won it at all before this. It's outstanding stuff. You know, he's just very, very electric around these tight tracks. He was probably better placed than some of the other horses. Delta Work presenting Percy, the positions they found themselves in to try to win a Gold Cup in a reasonably big field, 12 runners or whatever it was, being ridden as far back as they were. It's very, very hard, but it probably puts pressure on your jumping as well when you're held up in a race like the Gold Cup. Neither of them really jumped well enough, and it was too difficult. But then Percy obviously fell at 2 out. He might have been somewhat involved, and Delta Work finished 5th. But Alvin Photo was in a slightly better position, maybe because he jumped that bit better. And amazingly, Willie then had to do the press conference. I'm in the media tent here. He had to do the press conference in the side room of the media tent, but there was no TV. By the time he came out, the Fox Hunters was at the second last. Now, he the favourite in the Fox Hunters, who was essentially on the cusp of giving him 5 winners out of 5, which I presume is history in successful race at Cheltenham. But he only saw the last sort of half a minute of the race because he was still dealing with the press. And it was like, imagine having a favourite for a race at Cheltenham, you're not even able to watch it when you're over here. That's the grace of the man, you know. And after Goshen won the triumph, or Goshen fell in the triumph, Willie was all about Gary, and he's a class action man, class action trainer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Are there any other big trends emerging from the course of the week? Anything that is going to be your takeaway from Cheltenham this year?
Just the Irish dominance again, Ger, you know, in the handicaps. Just looking at the county hurdle here and see how it's going to end up. But the Irish dominance has been so pronounced this week. I think at the moment Willie and Gordon have 7 winners each. It's probably going to finish 19-9 to the Irish, which I think happened a few years ago. So it's absolute dominance. Irish race is in a very strong place, but I think the repercussions for British racing extend far beyond how they got on at Cheltenham, to be honest.
Yeah, so they've obviously decided to go behind closed doors from next week, which again, if you can get stuff away that is going to be safe for people and safe for the people to take part in, then that seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, less than 500 people. It's consistent with government guidelines, and I think that racing going ahead is definitely a nice distraction. People crashing all over the place. People aren't going to get paid because they're not going to work, and I think racing has reached a decent compromise in terms of keeping the show on the road. Yeah,
okay. And sorry, apart from Ireland beating England, are there any other kind of surprise performances, good or bad, that you were kind of thinking, did everybody live up to the pre-festival hype?
I suppose not everyone. It was great to see Sam Crow winning, obviously, and Violin was absolutely brilliant. Willie's performance in winning 7 races and Gordon's is quite astonishing, really. The Stairs Hurdle was a bit of a mad race. Champion Chase was very forgettable. But, you know, the Champion Hurdle Epitaph was very good. The Gold Cup, we had a hell of a race. Violin looks a hugely exciting horse. So does Honeysuckle. We really fascinating Irish prospects. But just our dominance of the handicaps this week might have repercussions down the line, because I don't know how the handicap can be anything but harsh on the Irish horses going forward.
Right. The age-old story. One last question. So Albion Photo comes back next year for the hat-trick, right? Is that a nailed on? Yeah?
That would be it. Just to mention, his owner, 73-year-old Joe Donnelly, is here today. Joe's had his health scares in the past, so make it that what you will, but he came over to see his horse win a Gold Cup, and he'll have quite a day, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, Johnny, we'll let you go. Thanks a million, man.
Thanks, sure.
That's Johnny Ward there at Cheltenham this week. And as ever, a reminder, Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. Obviously, that news came through yesterday that racing was going to go ahead behind closed doors, and it is going to be the only thing that we have to talk about that's live next week. So we'll obviously be bringing you chapter and verse on what's going on. And obviously, it's an evolving situation. As any news breaks, we will of course be bringing it to you on all of our social channels. Check out offtheball.com, or of course you can stay tuned to News Talk Radio as well. See you next week.
Friday night
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.